to DBSync's Partner Series, where we show the invaluable work that our partners bring when successfully implementing products and resources for their clients. In this segment, we'll be discussing challenges and lessons learned when adopting Salesforce CRM. As we all know, Salesforce, like most technologies, is complex and frankly getting more and more complicated every day with more offerings and capabilities. So you can imagine that as an integration company, we're basically challenged daily with all the different use cases that come up. Often sometimes to the point that we feel like we're almost unable to keep up with what's really happening in the so-called universe of Salesforce. So this is why we're so interested and really grateful that we have the opportunity to tap into our partners' expertise to see what's really going on. Basically, what are they actually dealing with? Not just in the integration space, because, we're DBSync, that's what we do. So obviously we're interested there, but also what else are they seeing with new customers adopting Salesforce? What are some of the issues they're confronting in identifying new products and services, when doing implementations, with ongoing maintenance, basically the gambit of situations one might face in doing this kind of work. So for this reason, I'm looking very forward to exploring all of this with my guest today, Dan Corbett, who's a managing partner of the Black Iron Group, a DBSync partner since 2010. Dan, we know you've seen some things, both routine and unique. And so I'm really interesting to kind of delve into that a little bit. But before we do that, I want to first formally welcome you and ask you to tell us a little bit more in detail about who you are, what the Black Iron Group does, and what you're most proud of or even more famous for, if you will, in the work that you do.
Okay, that's a mouthful. So my name's Dan Corbett. I'm the managing partner of Black Iron Group and actually the founder. The 2010 thing kind of caught me by surprise. We've been doing this since 2004 as Salesforce kind of started their partner ecosystem, I guess. And we
2010 with us. Sorry.
2010 with you, 2004 with Salesforce, right? And so we're kind of a charter member of the club, I guess. And we've seen, so if you're asking me something that I'm most proud of, it's probably that. We've been, being a Salesforce partner is not easy. If it was, everybody would do it. And you're only as good as the last couple of gigs you did. So 17-year, 18-year track record means that we've irritated few and satisfied many. And, it sort of gets you to that longevity, I guess. Our focus, so Salesforce kind of started and you took whatever gigs came, but over the years, Salesforce has kind of quietly demanded that you begin focusing in on particular sectors. And so at this point, we're exclusively, almost exclusively, focused in on the manufacturing space and on, which is a really weird thing in the transportation space, trucking dealerships and heavy equipment dealerships. So those are kind of the two pieces of business as Salesforce sort of defines it that we're following at this point.
Yeah, no, I saw that. I did a little bit of stalking on Facebook and LinkedIn and noticed that, particularly with the trucking. And now, what I noticed that you were doing a series of videos yourself on kind of, Salesforce and why that that area is such a good place for Salesforce. Why would you say that in particular? What about trucking and manufacturing would you say is such a good match for what Salesforce can do?
Well, I think I would have said, if you'd asked me this 10 years ago, when we were 7 years in, I would probably said it wasn't a great match, but Salesforce has come a long way at this point, right? And kind of the way that we can code our way around problems with Apex or code our way around problems with Visualforce and Aura and Lightning components gives us the ability to do a whole lot of stuff that we couldn't do at that point. Trucking dealerships historically don't do a good job of CRMing, if that's a verb, right? I mean, it's really, it's aimed at trucks and they sort of sell trucks. So coming in kind of greenfield, Salesforce is a really good kind of broad applicable software package, and manufacturing sort of has the same feel. They're focused on the product and they're focused on the warehouse and focused on MRP and haven't historically been focused on CRM. So that's been a nice place for them. It's the next place for them basically to evolve. How's that?
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. So now let's get into a little bit more of the details about the specific types of challenges the folks we're just talking about are facing. Like we'll approach it maybe from sort of an analysis from when we're brand new. What does that look like when you're a newbie? Might things change in about 6 months once you've gotten a little savvier? And maybe after a year or more, are you seeing, different challenges? Are people moving, into sort of new territory, new products, whatever? Just kind of walk us through these phases. And so maybe we kind of got a sense of, the type of customer you deal with, but what are would you say their most typical challenges are when first adopting Salesforce? Basically, like you said, maybe they're not, quote, natural at it. So what would you see are most typical?
I think universally for this segment of customer, high tech would obviously be different, or media space would be different. But for these guys, their desire or even willingness to do this, right, is they're pretty suspect about the software in the first place. And so I think one of the first things that we try to do is coach the executives at companies to deal with, get the data that you need. There's a lot of data you want. We get that. Let's get the data we need, just block and tackle in the beginning. And to your point, let's spend 6 months kind of hunkered down on that. I think if you build a 6-month data set for customers, the sales reps sort of get the feel for it. They start to see some value out of the tool. And I think, at that point, you can start to move up, capture more data, get kind of people more involved to sort of put things together. The other thing I'd say, not to plug Salesforce, but since with the advent of inbox, the idea that emails from Outlook or Gmail can just kind of find their way into Salesforce by themselves without you doing anything is a huge thing for a 6-month customer, because the last thing in the world they want to do, they've been focused on Outlook. They learned how to do it. Last thing in the world they want to do is learn new software. If we can get those activities into Salesforce for you and start to build reports to say, this is who you're talking to. And by the way, here's who you're not talking to. That is really huge. And it's data that is just getting sucked up without them having to do anything. You know what I'm saying? It's very, it's free almost for them to kind of put it together.
Yeah, no, and I know how invaluable that is, certainly, because not coming naturally as a techie myself to this world, you're like, I wouldn't say so much suspect, but just kind of like, it's almost overwhelming sometimes because there's so much that can be done. You don't even know where to start to ask questions. So that's why your guidance, I know, is so critical. So it kind of sounds like, as we're just sort of talking about this, that obviously there are some changes after 6 months, or some different challenges. One, in that people feel a little more comfortable. Like you said, they don't want to learn a bunch of new things after they've just mastered one. So, not only do you kind of, sort of provide that comfort of being able to add those things, but any other sort of challenges. And kind of the reason I ask that is we, from our experience, that after about 6 months, we would often see a major redesign, because customers were like, wow, this tool is really complex and look at all this capability. We should be doing more with this. Do they come to you with sort of those questions, or do you kind of guide them through it?
It kind of depends. A lot of customers are coming to us and saying, all right, next is Service Cloud, or next is CPQ. But in 6 months, typically what we're going back to them with is, I don't think Salesforce is a great product, and the analytical tool in there is outstanding. I just don't think anybody spends enough time up front on reports and dashboards. And so a lot of the time when we're coming back to people, we're saying, you've been doing all this work, slave to the grind, right? Keying this stuff in. Let's get some use out of that data. And so typically, once you've got a good data set, as we start to build those reports and dashboards, that makes a huge difference to both the sales team, but especially the executives kind of one level up.
Gotcha. So that really are some of your best recommendations or solutions after that 6-month period is, getting to those reports, getting that data, making sure, like you said, not only, do we have, hopefully the goal is getting what they want, but really kind of also showing them what they might need as well.
Yeah, Salesforce, the get more of what you already own, right? So let's take advantage of the analytics. So.
Right, definitely. Okay, so we got a kind of a good sense when you're new, you're just like, help, guide us. When you're 6 months in, you maybe start asking questions like, what's next? Or, can you help us here? Or you can say, hey, now that you've got all this, look what we can now add on. So obviously folks aren't overwhelmed. What are we looking at after about a year? Are we seeing kind of new capabilities? Are we seeing folks just saying, hey, listen, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? What would you say your most sort of common cases might be?
It's almost never, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because even if it ain't broke, people like to break it themselves. I think a lot of people are adding kind of functionality, right? Once they start to see the customer in the middle, right? They've been thinking about product in the middle of their entire careers. When they start thinking about customer at the sort of center of this, there's a lot of stuff that you can bolt on, right? So quoting with CPQ could come out, kind of a piece up for it. If they've, with the trucking industry, we work with what are called dealer management systems, thinks about ERP for dealership. Going to get that data and bring it into Salesforce adds a whole nother level of kind of sophistication to what they're doing. Building out documents, e-signature, Service Cloud, if they've got remote techs, FSL. So I think a lot of people start to think, well, what else can we do? Now that we've got this really cool core set of data, what else can we do? And typically it's a whole new project that we're sort of rolling into. So.
And I know you've sort of given us a general sense of kind of your customers as a whole. Do you have any, like one sort of story that sort of stands out as kind of maybe either a typical challenge or maybe something was totally unique that you were kind of able to work through that might be really helpful for those listening to like, oh, I had A, thought of that, and B, what a great solution.
So a trucking dealership who shall remain nameless, we did last year or early this year, we did their DMS integration. Their tool is called CarMac. And so we integrated Salesforce to CarMac, their DMS. We brought a lot of that data in. We enabled the mobile app. They use Salesforce Maps, which we can talk about here later, so that their field reps kind of know where they're going and kind of route plan and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We're doing a new project for them for Service Cloud and Field Service Lightning because they've got 800 field service techs out there that go and fix trucks. And they've been using, whiteboards across 60 locations with 30 guys listed at each. It's a mess. And so, they thought, now we've got this data, maybe we can take advantage of some of this. It's an enormous project. It's going to take, 8 months to put together, but that's next for them. And I thought that was a really cool, they basically kind of gave me the line that I've already got this account data in here and sort of lined up. Let's take advantage of that and start to see what else we can push out. So.
Yeah, the true power of automation, right? I mean,
yeah.
What did we do with, before? I mean, I know we did, but sometimes it kind of feels like, wow, how did we do so well with, in some ways so little? Because it just seems so amazing now to be able to just, literally push a button and all kinds of things appear.
Exactly.
So moving in the same direction, but from a slightly different, direction, if you will, or approach. We know there are hundreds of SaaS business apps out there, and it's kind of sounds like, for some of your folks, you may be doing this, but I'm kind of curious to hear, are you setting up other apps or supporting other apps, along with all the Salesforce work that you do? Because, I imagine you, like we said, you've got some stories and some great examples we've already heard, but there also might be a horror story or two. And so if you feel like you could share some successes or failures, or what I say, successes waiting to happen, we'd love to hear that. And maybe tell us if you have to do something differently when implementing these apps that maybe bring different challenges.
So, I mean, if it's QuickBooks, it's always you guys, right? So we're basically connecting out to QuickBooks with you guys. A lot of customers who have quote documents or something that's not all the way to CPQ, but certainly isn't, mail merge in Salesforce, which is, I guess I can say is horrible since it's DBSync, not Salesforce. So Conga Composer has become a big deal. E-signature is getting more, especially with COVID, got more and more kind of intense as we put this together. Yeah. And then kind of on the outside, we partner with some of these DMS systems, dealer management systems. CarMac is one of them, Proceeds. So guys that are completely divorced from sort of cloud-based CRM that we talk about, but understanding how their databases work, we've kind of got involved with that piece as well. I'm not sure that there's different, the challenges are all the same, right? It's like anybody can figure out how to push the buttons and configure any software. It's really, what do you want it to do? How do you sort of design that process to work well with both sets of tools? And then how do you get that kind of put together? Customers need to sort of have a sense of urgency too, right? It can't just be on the partner or on you guys to make this happen. It turns out Harry Potter's not real. So, somebody's got to be involved in this on the client side to sort of put it together. Right.
Yeah. It's a true partnership, as we say. And, definitely kind of and it sounds like you're very much like us in that, having to have a deep understanding of the customer, building that relationship and knowing that helps you to not only keep things moving, but again, to kind of see beyond what we have and know what to recommend and those kind of things next. So I see we share kind of a similar philosophy, obviously, about kind of a customer-centric approach.
Right.
Now, let me ask you this, and you can tell me if you've had any experience. As you know, we've expanded our product portfolio a little bit from but from Cloud Workflow to Salesforce Replication, and now we've moved into the world of Google Archive. And as you might imagine, we've experienced a little bit of a learning curve. And so I'm curious if you too have had to implement any of, if you've sort of, for your customers, have either been replication or whatever else, and maybe some good, bad, or ugly of what that experience has been.
Yeah. So being a partner with you guys is mostly introductions on our side, right? Especially if we're talking the QuickBooks piece, it's basic, it's pretty well built out, and you guys have the 4 hours that you sort of put together. One of our joint clients is doing the Google Archive piece as well, but from our side, it was really an introduction and, best of luck. So I don't really have any stories for how it works because we don't You know what I mean? You guys are basically doing that on your side.
So I guess it's more, I guess you haven't necessarily heard any horror stories from your clients and, like, thanks for introducing us to this horrible nightmare.
No. No news is good news, right? So, yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, great to hear. Yes. I guess we'll wait to hear on our side if we hear differently, but just kind of curious on, so you have been able to, either make some recommendations and recommend those. And so far, so good. Cross your fingers that it seems like it's gone fairly well.
Yes.
All right. Well, Dan, I have to say, you're obviously a wealth of information coming out of Black Iron Group. I feel like we've got the beginnings of a guidebook and how to best implement Salesforce. And so I feel like, thank you so much. We've gained basically another insider view into the challenges, as well as some sage advice and how to best approach them, particularly maybe in fields that aren't as comfortable in the IT world and maybe even a little skeptical. And so we appreciate the knowledge and sort of your key expertise from the field, as much as I'm sure our customers do as well. So I just want to thank you again for taking your time, giving us your brain power and reflecting on these experiences. It's really been a pleasure getting to talk to you about this and, hearing a little bit more about the trials and tribulations. Oftentimes we spend, a lot of time on, hey, look what we're doing well, but we also kind of want to hear about, oops, this was hard, or more importantly, folks are a little, timid about these things, and kind of this is the role we have to play in sort of putting them at ease as well.
Sure.
So before we remind people where they can find out more about you and the great work that you're doing, do you have any sort of last thoughts or pearls of wisdom you'd like to leave us with as far as this universe of Salesforce?
If you're thinking about doing a Salesforce implementation, or if you're kind of thinking about a refinement or that kind of stuff, having a team on your side who's committed and focused and knowledgeable. They don't have to be knowledgeable of Salesforce, yes, but they have to know your processes.
Sure.
Is going to put you light years ahead of anybody else doing this. And it's none of this happens by accident. It takes hard work. You've got partners who can help you do it, but it still leaves half the kind of workload in your pile. Build a good team on your side, and you're that much closer to success before we even start.
Yeah, fantastic. That's definitely more sage wisdom coming on your end. We really appreciate that, because I feel like you can say that and it's like, duh, obvious, but you're right. It isn't. It's not so much that it's not obvious, but it's a process as well.
Exactly.
So,
yep.
Tell us a little bit about, like I said, I stalked you a bit through Facebook and LinkedIn, so we know we can find you there. But any other places people can look to see any amazing new things that you're doing, or the amazing things you've already done?
We everything that you see on LinkedIn or Facebook starts on our blog. So check out our website, blackirongroup.com, and go to our blog post. We do probably one webinar a month. We probably post 2 or 3 how-tos a month, although I'm taking August off, to be perfectly honest.
Fair enough.
But once September starts, we'll be cranking back up into that as well. And then all the recordings are up there if you want to go see past stuff. So.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've heard it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And I think to follow along in that vein, obviously, we too have a little bit of information, whether it's our offerings, our stories, we've got webinars, we've got some blog information, etc., on our website, which is www.mydbsync.com. You can also find out some information about us and see what we're doing on YouTube. Follow us as well on LinkedIn and Twitter. So I just want to remind you to keep an eye out for our next Partner Insight video, and where we can continue to learn about the best approaches to the challenges of adopting Salesforce CRM. And like we said, we've heard from Dan today that no matter how good you are, no matter how willing your team is, there's always something new to learn or some challenge to overcome. So we're excited to continue to learn more about this and see as we can help you guys as our customers really build yourselves, as well as continue to build our expertise as well. So until we see you next, we'll continue to keep your apps talking. Thanks again for joining us. Bye-bye.